We have gone live. Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going into our third session of the day, and I'm really honored to be able to introduce you all to David Lockie from Pragmatic and Robby. I'm not even sure I want to pronounce your surname, McCullough. Is that any close?
Yeah, McCullough.
McCullough. Anyone who knows me knows I'm terrible at pronouncing anything that is more than one syllable. So thank you both for joining. Robby is from Beaver Builder, and this session is going to be all about discussing Gutenberg and page builders, and because David is part of an agency, also like the relationships going around that, and I'm going to leave them to introduce themselves and kick off and stuff. So have fun. I will be around. If you need me, just give me a yell.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So I guess let's start off with an intro. Robby, do you want to say who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. My name is Robby McCullough, and I'm one of the co-founders of Beaver Builder, which is a page builder tool for WordPress. We're about to celebrate our 4th birthday here. And before we started Beaver Builder, we were a web design agency, not unlike yourself, Dave. So we were building websites for clients. And that was kind of the genesis of the project, was that we were looking for a tool to kind of streamline that process. And then, yeah, fast forward a few years, and we've been full steam on Beaver Builder ever since.
Amazing. You've done the magic trick of going from service to product.
Yeah. Well, it was it didn't feel magic at the time. There was a lot of ups and downs and roller coaster rides in between. But yeah, that was the intention, and it ended up working out.
That's pretty mega. Well done. So I'm David Lockie. I run Pragmatic. We're a digital agency based in Brighton in the UK. We're about 50 people. And we specialize in WordPress from a tech side, but we work right from strategy and user experience through to hosting and support. So we've got a really nicely multidisciplinary team. And for Gutenberg and page builders in general are really interesting because we go right from a sort of small 4, 5, 6 day project where we just need to spin up a site really quickly. So speaking to your kind of streamlined production needs, Robby, right through to kind of enterprise requirements around workflows and authorization and kind of the side of content management where WordPress really needs a lot of engineering to get it through. So I'm super stoked to be invited to be here today, and really nice to get a chance to chat to you as well, Robby. So I guess let's start from the bottom, really. Tell us what Gutenberg is, what it means for you, and why would we be talking about page builders on today's show?
Yeah, sure. Likewise, really glad to be here and to chat. This is going to be fun. I remember back when we were in WordCamp US in Philadelphia, going on a year and a half ago, when during the State of the Word, Matt mentioned the kind of new 3-pillar approach to WordPress development and how one of the focuses was going to be customization. And we had this kind of heart drop moment of like, oh gosh, like this sounds a lot like what we're doing. And is this going to encroach on our space? And ever since then, it's been a really interesting path that the whole WordPress community has been going down in this push, and watching Gutenberg develop, and for us trying to figure out what it means for our business and what it means for WordPress, and how we can skate to where the puck is going in that sense. So Gutenberg, I'm sure most people watching this are familiar, but just as a one-liner, is the code name for the new push by the WordPress core team to re-engineer and reimagine the editor. And currently, Gutenberg is solely focusing on the content editor within WordPress, but the eventual plan is for the technology and the logic and the stack that they're building to move beyond the editor and to get into the area of site customization, being able to use blocks to create headers and footers and menus and design entire sites.
Awesome. So this is phasing out of Tiny MCE and the text editor that everyone's been familiar with. WordPress has been around, and eventually superseding the customizer as well. So it sounds like a pretty big undertaking. Anyone that works with WordPress probably knows that content is the messiest and difficult part of everything. So I can only imagine the lengths that the core team have had to go to make sure this isn't going to break every WordPress site ever made. So, and you mentioned blocks there. So just to call that out, blocks are like the kind of the foundational elements that Gutenberg uses, right? So you could have a text block or an image block or a video block, and they're all different types of content or different formats of content. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So you mentioned your reaction to hearing Matt talk about this. I can imagine that if I was in your shoes, I'd have been feeling pretty nervous and excited. Like, how do you feel about it now, having lived with that announcement for this time? And like, what's the sentiment that you're picking up from the rest of the page builder community around Gutenberg? What are people feeling?
It's been a roller coaster. I'm probably going to say roller coaster 100 times throughout this hour talk, right? One of the things I've tried, and I consider myself an optimist. I've really tried to look at this optimistically, and one of the things initially that was concerning and frustrating about the process of the community kind of accepting and getting used to Gutenberg was all of just the negativity surrounding the discussion. I know that we're a bit of a vocal minority in the WordPress developer community, the folks that are, presumably reading WP Tavern or Post Status and attending WordCamps. WordPress is such a huge project with so much reach that the folks that we're surrounding ourselves with are just a very small sliver of that. The folks that are really actively working in WordPress and working to build WordPress. But it was really concerning that there was so much negativity around the discussion, so much kind of animosity. People were not happy with the project or the direction it was going, or didn't think it was necessary. And, looking through all of the 1-star reviews and the comments on some of the original posts, and talks of forking WordPress and everyone discussing that, they were going to go to Shopify or explore different CMSs. I think that I want WordPress to be successful, and for WordPress to be successful, I think it's really important that Gutenberg is successful, and the tone initially did not, lend itself to that. So since, again, fast forwarding back maybe a few months now to the next WordCamp US, where Matty, oh gosh, this is one of those names I always read, but I've never heard out loud. Matthias, he did the live demo of Gutenberg. And you could almost feel in the crowd the opinion starting to shift. He did such a great job on that demo, and Gutenberg was really starting to mature as a tool. And so that's been really encouraging, is seeing that the WordPress community is slowly starting to embrace and appreciate the work that's being done. And I'm seeing a lot more people appreciating Gutenberg and finding it to be a good, solid piece of software.
Yeah, I think the core team worked really hard to get that reputation, and it's really well deserved. I mean, if there was ever going to be a project which inflamed the community and caused concern, this was going to be it. So the fact that they've done such a good job at explaining over and over again at such length, I'm thinking Tammy in the forums particularly, just maintaining that kind of attitude is really commendable. And that's what WordPress is all about, right? It's a community. There's no diktat. It's about bringing, and it's there's a lot of thinking to align on, and a lot of consideration that's gone on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how frustrating that's got to be too. in building software, you want people to use your software as early in the process as possible, because then you can get reactions. You can figure out how people are going to use whatever you're building in a real world situation. But you're also, if you're working towards a vision, it's rare that that vision is actualized in those early stages. And I think that was part of the problem of what happened, was that they, wanted people using and working with Gutenberg as early as possible, but it was before people really couldn't comprehend, or there wasn't enough time for people to understand where it was going and to see the progress that now is starting to become a reality.
Yeah, and we should also not skip past the fact that during this kind of simple rebuild the WordPress editor project, we've also persuaded one of the largest tech companies in the world to change the licensing around some really exciting code, right? The React library, when it looked like WordPress was going to choose a different library, then I mean, I don't know for sure that it's connected, but Facebook released it under compatible licensing, which is amazing. I mean, that's one of the things I love about WordPress, is the open source, the community, the power that we have as 30% of the web, the responsibility. But that was awesome to see.
Agreed. Yeah, it definitely seemed that way, right? It was suspect with the timing of it all, that happened. But yeah, it speaks kind of to the power of this community and the sway that it has.
Yeah, the conspiracy nut in me wants to think that maybe it was the network of back channeling Silicon Valley VCs, and they all kind of had a dinner and they're like, hey, about this React licensing.
Yeah. I imagine there's a few names on a few shared names on Matt and Mark's cell phone, and there might have been a little. Yeah, I like that theory too. It's fun to think about.
So let's talk about Beaver, and tell me about your time, and maybe also say who you think Gutenberg is aimed at, and sort of describe what crossover there's going to be there. Who's going to have this choice, be faced with the choice of Gutenberg or Beaver Builder?
Yeah. So I mentioned, we started doing client services and shifted into product, and it was a new territory for us. So we've the whole time been learning as we go. And one of the things when we first got started that we weren't very good at and didn't know a lot was who our customer was and who we were building for. And, there was this obvious kind of parallel between Beaver Builder and Page Builders and Squarespace, right? Or Wix, and these kind of these tools that are targeted more towards maybe the less tech savvy folks or end users, folks that aren't going to be writing HTML, CSS code. And we thought, oh, well, that would be a good, we could do that. We should go after those people because there's a lot more of them, right? And then what we found is that a lot of our customers were folks very similar to ourselves. They were maybe single or small freelancers and design agencies that found that using a page builder or a visual design tool could really streamline their build process, and it made things a lot faster. And then there was this obvious benefit of being able to deliver a site to a client that was also editable by someone who is not, comfortable getting into HTML code or PHP theme files of that nature. And with Gutenberg, one of our responses to that has been to double down on that market. Once Gutenberg goes into core, anyone that has never built a WordPress site that then gets into WordPress will be using Gutenberg. It's going to be the new standard, is to have it hasn't gone full page builder yet, but you're going to have much more control to visually design your website. One of the analogies I like to use is as it goes, our hope, and this is of course hopeful because we in worst case scenario, if Gutenberg puts us all out of business, no one's hoping for that. But I could see Gutenberg serving a role kind of like an Instagram, and we want to be more like a Photoshop. Our hope is that Gutenberg is successful and it continues to allow WordPress to take on market share, maybe pulling people away that would otherwise be going to places like a Squarespace or a Wix because of the ease to lay out a site. But with Squarespace and Wix, one of the things we hear is you always reach that point of limitation where you want to do more, but you don't have the ability to. And that's where we hopefully see ourselves and other page builders in the space coming in is providing that next level of customization, or that next level of, too, as an agency, we build websites, but we really do so much more. The website is just the front facing, end goal, end piece, but there's so much more in that process of working with a client, working with a business, and marketing and selling an idea or a story, or helping a user get to a goal. And that's the space that we've really enjoyed being in and innovating in, and we want to continue doing work in that space and thinking about, how do we design and what other factors go into that process, and what else can we help and continue to streamline and make better.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind of a common theme with WordPress. I mean, I feel like we've seen this a little bit with some of the WordPress.com and Jetpack and WooCommerce, which is it's in the community's interest to build out a very stable, powerful toolkit. It's not in the community's best interest to build out the final 20% that you actually need to produce most things with it. So, I mean, my take on Gutenberg, for what it's worth, is that what is much needed with the kind of WordPress page editing community is sort of a standardized approach. So are we going to use shortcodes? Are we going to use semantic HTML? Are we going to use data attributes? How do we provide a framework that can then be extended really seamlessly, so that kind of basic content editing experience is not only best in class, but actually beyond anything that we see today. It allows things like granular access to posts via API. It allows you to programmatically add very sophisticated blocks, but the core team doesn't. I can't imagine that they're going to have the desire and remit and time and energy to build out a huge library of these, right? I mean, with the tiny MCE, I mean, I've seen sites where there's like 200 tiny MCE buttons and the whole thing's been replaced and extended. But actually that kind of principle of, for 80% of CMS jobs, the set of buttons that were kind of maintained and restricted in the content management area was the right amount. It was that kind of Goldilocks amount, not too little that it was useless, not too much that it was super complex. I have a feeling that that's going to be one of the things that the community just gets right, because that's the way that open source communities, like, there's kind of that tension there, isn't there? So from an agency perspective and from a kind of client-centric perspective, I'll be really pleased when the underlying content structures within the WordPress database are all kind of standardized. There's no crazy shortcodes here or there, or they're few and far between. So, yeah, I mean, you talk about the worst case of page builders going out of business, but I just can't imagine that that's anywhere even near the case, right? I mean, if anything, it's going to be,
fingers crossed.
Now you've got this amazing toolkit to play with. Like, how wild can your imaginations get? Are you going to use machine learning to automatically build pages? Are you going to bring in content blocks from like third-party systems, like primary CMSs or social media? Like, how amazing can we make the WordPress content editing experience with this with everyone working off the same foundation? It's going to be, I'm super excited for it. So I guess your backlog's looking pretty big right now.
Yeah, there's so many fun places that it can go, and this transitional time that WordPress is in breeds so much opportunity, I think, too. The way you described described that is similar, or it reminds me a lot of when the theme customizer was new, and there was a point in time when whichever theme you installed of the tens of thousands of options all had a different way of doing their thing, right? The settings panels, they weren't standardized. Making changes to one theme required learning a completely different interface to the theme you were in before. And for all the kind of kicking and screaming in the community about the customizer, it ended up working very, very well for that reason. Having a centralized and a standardized way of doing things makes it a lot easier for users, and eventually makes it a lot easier for developers and creators and builders. Once you get over that initial hump of having to either backwards port or relearn the new technology, and we're still in that kind of awkward hump phase right now, obviously, and will continue to be as Gutenberg goes into core. But yeah, I think that one of the things you touched on too is Gutenberg is modernizing the WordPress stack as well, and embracing React and a lot more front-end technology. It's going to make it a lot easier to tap into external APIs, or you'll have to forgive me here. I used to call myself a developer, but for the last few years, I've been focusing more on the marketing end. So I'm a little out of practice, and I can't really own that label anymore. But I do think that and the core team can't really talk about this, but the Gutenberg push is a push to modernize and refactor WordPress and move away from some of the legacy technology and backwards compatibility that has been slowing it down, maybe slowing down the progress. But if it's successful, and Chris Lemma is one of the guys I look to and like to read, and he wrote a great article about this, about how it's like changing the engine of a plane mid-flight. It's a delicate process, and you can't just come on the loudspeaker and say, hey, we're going to change out everything, and what we're doing right now isn't working. But it does feel like, yeah, hold on tight. But it does feel like it is an effort by the core team to move in that direction and start modernizing and bringing in new technology to the WordPress core software.
Awesome. So you must have been thinking a little bit about migration of content and that sort of transition. So one day, one of your agency's clients wakes up and WordPress has been auto-updated, it's version 5, and they've got a new tab there. What does that experience look for, and sort of what's some of your thinking around that?
Yeah, it's been a progress, or we've been working through that naturally for the last few months, and it started with big ambitions and big goals and wide eyes, and we've slowly kind of refined what we're focusing on. I had this idea initially of, oh, how cool if everything in WordPress becomes a block, if we can start to leverage blocks in a page builder interface and start working with them there, and what will that look like, and translating between Gutenberg and Beaver Builder and back and forth. As we dug into that, it proved to be much more challenging than I was just daydreaming about. So what we've focused on, and what we just released a release candidate with our Gutenberg support. And right now it's simply just being able to move between the Gutenberg editor and Beaver Builder. Beaver Builder, just like Gutenberg, is an alternate to the default editing experience in WordPress. And what we ended up doing was building a block that allows you to switch between Gutenberg and Beaver Builder, and vice versa, without mangling your site and mangling your code. So that was the first just initial step, is for all of our users, when Gutenberg goes live, being able to get into Beaver Builder as you normally were, and to be able to start using Gutenberg and switch between them. That's where we've gotten as far as like we're ready to ship at this point. From my understanding, it's been a real challenge trying to work with blocks outside of the Gutenberg code base and interface. It just doesn't seem to be a reality right now. To do anything with blocks, you really need to be in Gutenberg. But I'm interested to see, as the project progresses and as Gutenberg moves into the site customization piece, and also what's going on with the Gutenberg theme, that yet to be kind of worked on 2019, maybe Gutenberg theme. I think that's going to be really exciting to see, the direction that the core team goes when they start moving into the site customization area, into the theming area and the styling area. And hopefully we'll be able to glean some insight and ideas on where we can go to continue to build on and improve that experience.
Yeah. So would you say that's the sort of the thing that you're most anticipating, is that kind of full commercial release of here are the blocks in the back end, here's the front end, let's see how that all plays out and works and how people react? You kind of just
sure. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think it's going to be I think it's just going to be a wildly interesting, next few, and we're already in March, right? April's next month. April was kind of the target date of Gutenberg's going to reach a larger audience in April. No one's exactly sure what that means. If it's, I think it sounds like from hearing Matt Mullenweg talk on he just did that interview in the Advanced WordPress group and various podcasts and whatnot, that they're going to roll it out on WordPress.com and they're going to roll it out in Calypso before they try to do the push into core. And I'm not sure, that's what I'm curious on, is what's that going to look like? What's the timeline of from being in that kind of walled garden environment of WordPress.com or Calypso? How long is it going to live there until it starts going into core? And then also, how is it going to change? It's exciting because they have the opportunity to do some much more significant user testing and analysis and tweaking of Gutenberg based on real world users, outside again of that kind of small vocal minority, just the folks that are following the project. Once they get in WordPress.com, they can start seeing how my mom, who's working on her website, how she deals with it, and maybe folks that had no idea that Gutenberg is even happening, what that looks like, and then how it changes in response to that. It's both like a little terrifying but wildly interesting. I think it's going to be extremely fun to see what that looks like, and hopefully it all works out well. I think that's what everyone's nervous about and scared about, is what that's going to look like when it goes into core and how it's going to impact them.
Excited. Yeah, it's these visions of like the WordPress core team and the commits all there. It's it's a click away from pushing it to 15% of the web, and there's like a developer. Like
God, could you imagine? Yeah, right. That reminds me of when we do a newsletter, and I remember fondly when we hit 100 subscribers on our newsletter count, and I would hit that send button. And if you use MailChimp, they have this sweaty, it's like a scared, nervous, sweaty finger that's about to push the button, and I used to feel that. And then as it grows and grows and grows, and we're still a very modest number on our newsletter list. God, could you even imagine what that must be? What the mental, the level of nerve-wracking that must go into that. It's yeah, kudos to the folks who can do that on a daily basis and stay sane and get things done still.
I wonder whether they're going to do a kind of a phased rollout. For sure, if I was ever in that situation, I think I'd want to push it out via a feature flag to 10% of the users or something, just for fear that the support forums would be totally overloaded. If there's anyone listening here who's ever wanted to support the WordPress project, and I'd say jumping on the support forums the days around and after the Gutenberg launch is probably a pretty good opportunity.
Yeah, if you have thick skin, or hopefully you won't need thick skin, but hopefully it's just a buttery smooth rollout with no hiccups or issues, and
yeah,
we'll see.
So keeping track on time. Wow, is that an hour already? No, it's half an hour, isn't it? Okay. So I'm gonna ask you an unfair question. So, in fact, I'm going to give you a choice, and you can have a think about it by the end of the session. So, either I want a Gutenberg-related song from the guitar that I can see behind you, or I want to know if you could build any Gutenberg block, what would it be and why? So,
oh, interesting.
So you can think about those. We can go and we can do something more mundane for now. In fact, we've got a question. Should we move to that and You can put some chords together in your head.
Yeah, sure. I'm similar to how I used to call myself a developer. I used to call myself a musician. It's a past life at this point. But yeah, let's move on to the question. I think that would be better for everyone involved, particularly anyone listening.
Yeah, I get the feeling that Robby's not going to speak to me again after this session. So enjoy this brief temporary magic while we've got it, folks. Okay, so Tom Shute has asked, how aware do you think clients and end users are of Gutenberg? Using the plane analogy, if the passengers knew the engine was getting changed mid-flight, there'd be a panic.
Yeah, sure.
Are your customers aware, like as agencies, and are their customers in turn?
My hunch or guess on that is that most people are blissfully unaware. Just in the sheer numbers of market share that WordPress has, 30% almost of the web. I think I'd be curious to know what the percentage is. What percentage of people that use WordPress, even on a weekly or a daily basis, tune in to the community, or are reading the Tavern, or attending WordCamps, or participating in this discussion. I think it's probably small, and then I think the percentage of the people underneath, the people that they're building websites for, folks like yourself, how many of your clients are aware? I mean, actually, that might be a better question for you. What's your process been in informing either past or present clients of this? Because I guess another interesting point in that space too is if you're taking on a WordPress project right now, maybe something that needs a ACF integration or some kind of post meta, something in that space. How do you approach that? Not to shift the table on you, but now I'm curious here.
It's pretty Teflon work there, Robby. Thanks.
Maybe it'll be you not talking to me at the. I hope we can come out of this as friends, Dave. It's been so good so far.
So I think we've been trying to be judicious about the messaging around it. So is it 100? Do you know if it's 100% confirmed that when it gets pushed, it's going to be called Gutenberg? Like, is that the editor button that you'll see, or say Gutenberg?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's not. It's going to just be the editor.
Okay.
But I don't. It's been discussed that the name isn't going to go away. It will not be called Gutenberg in the software, but it's going to, I think, be colloquially called Gutenberg amongst folks that are in the know for gosh knows how long.
So I guess we definitely haven't done kind of a major marketing exercise around it yet. But when we're talking to clients who are starting new projects, we're definitely trying to make them aware and say, hey, look, there is a new editor experience coming for WordPress. It should be this year. It should be really good. There should be pretty slick migration and integration tools. This is going to be very widely tested by, we only use sort of pretty well-known page builders when we use them for lots of reasons. But, there are going to be migration tools there. There are going to be integrations. It's going to be thought about and tested. So we're trying to make people aware without freaking them out. It's kind of something to get people excited about as well, right? Because you can say, hey, look, we're using this page builder because there isn't one in WordPress yet, but there is one coming. And when that's in, then we'll probably have a little job just to bring it up to date. But after that, your site is going to be like on rocket fuel, because there'll be this whole new foundation for the experience. Trying to think of features and examples of how we can use it. Like, how do we help a user understand, like a customer understand why this is going to be more valuable, like more powerful for them? And you're writing a blog post and you'll be able to drop a product listing into the middle of the blog post and customize how that looks before you finish writing the blog post, without having to kind of drop a shortcode in and then do a preview and then go back and make a bunch of changes. That kind of
Sure.
slickness of editing. Yeah, it's a good call there, Robby. We should probably get onto the marketing team about that. Hey?
Yeah, highlighting the benefit, right? It's tough, especially since the product doesn't exist in the real world yet. I mean, real world, but you know, there aren't a lot of tangible examples or success stories yet to say, hey, look at this, look what's happening. You know, you brought up another interesting point just quickly, that the difference or the benefit between working on the front end and the back end, and how Gutenberg is kind of feathering that by, you know, again, this was one of the questions that came up during the State of the Word at Matt Mullenweg. He kept referring to Gutenberg as a front end builder, and someone, you know, asked a question borderline politely about, you know, you keep saying front end, but this is not actually happening in the front end, it's happening in the back end, and what does that mean? And you know, his response was that it's going to come down to themes, and themes will be able to style both the front end and the back end, and they're going to be able to kind of bring that space closer and closer together. But Gutenberg will still always exist in the back end, and the site that you publish is going to exist on the front end. And that's been an area that from the technical side too, that we've found a lot of challenges there, and that it's difficult, even just from the way WordPress is architected. When you are writing code that is meant to run in the back end of WordPress versus the front end of WordPress, it's, again, I wish I had more insight on this as a developer, but I remember fondly that there were very many challenges in bringing that experience that you could get in the back end over to the front end and doing that seamlessly. So that'll be really interesting to see what that looks like. And again, I'm also really excited to see the core's take on a theme in the Gutenberg world, and to see what that looks like. They released a couple, I think they released 4 kind of demo themes where there was back-end styling. So when you were working in Gutenberg, it felt and looked a lot like what it would publish out to on the front end. But I think there's still a lot of work. I mean, that's kind of the next piece, and a lot of work to be done there that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty crazy, I think. So I guess just to take on it from our perspective, because whilst we do still do those kind of reasonably small sites, and that's often for bigger clients. Actually, that's often where WordPress plays a part in an enterprise stack. Smaller, more peripheral sites, marketing sites around a kind of more traditionally enterprise CMS like Sitecore or Adobe. But we also increasingly have found enterprise keen to adopt WordPress for the primary CMS as well. So the great example is News International rebuilding their portfolio on WordPress. We've done similar work with enterprises, moving their entire digital estate in terms of sort of digital marketing, content management over to WordPress. And it's really interesting when you start getting into that kind of bigger enterprise software space, how many things that WordPress doesn't have, which kind of give it that edge. You know, anyone can log in and anyone can put a page together and press go. Actually start then freaking enterprise users out, right? Because you've got everything from sort of document management, you've got this security strand running through everything, you've got digital asset management across different locales, different teams, you've got the kind of business process and management workflow. So that could be kind of editorial approval, it could be stakeholder approval, it could be anything like that. You've got collaboration. So we saw that really interesting kind of Google Docs-like editing experience. I forget the name of the project now, but they got bought out by a publisher pretty soon after they'd released it. And the sort of whole content workflow thing. I mean, people talk about like digital first workflows, but actually all this stuff, Poetica. Thank you everyone in the comments. I was pretty sure it was Poetica, but yeah, really impressive project, got bought out equally impressively quickly. So I really hope that Gutenberg's going to build the scaffolding for a lot of that stuff to come in, right? Because often on a page you might have content that's locked down and only the marketing team can edit, but you've got an editorial team member who's allowed to submit this content for approval by their editor. Sorry, it's sirens here in Brighton.
Sounds like you guys burning down over there. I hope not.
Yeah.
I totally agree. We've just kind of been dipping our feet in the water of that space. We started out kind of targeting smaller freelancers shops, but have slowly kind of moved up market. Thankfully, to a lot of the folks that are using Beaver Builder, we have a couple folks that are using it in the enterprise space. We've actually just recently started working. I hope I'm allowed to say this, but we started working with the WordPress VIP team on one of their clients, and the challenges in the enterprise space, and particularly, in larger organizations, you don't just have the web guy that does the website. You have different teams with multiple people working on different elements, hopefully a lot of time at the same time. And yeah, it's fascinating. I think there are a lot of problems and room for improvements that WordPress can make in that space. And relative to, like you mentioned, Sitecore and Adobe Experience Manager, some of the enterprise grade solutions, I think there's a lot of business opportunity because a lot of those tools are wildly expensive, and they're only offering little niceties that could I don't want to say pretty easily, but they could very practically come over to WordPress.
Yeah, quite. And I kind of feel like we could talk for a lot longer. I'm also aware that people are asking comments. So I just wanted to talk about that last piece, though, which is porting function to WordPress. And our experience has been that more and more enterprises are looking at taking best of breed components and stitching them together into kind of an integrated digital platform. And WordPress works really well as that kind of digital glue or digital Lego right in the middle, because it already integrates with everything. You can do the end-to-end process of start the site, put some content in, publish it out, or you can replace any or all of that with enhancements, other components, integrated tools. So you can really kind of tailor it to exactly what your organization needs. And of course, because you're saving those license fees right at the start, you can invest in the kind of building the value that you need as a business, rather than having to learn a whole bunch of features that you might not need. So there's my little sort of play for WordPress Enterprise. But I guess my point there is that Gutenberg feels like it's setting the stage for a more effective headless CMS competitor from WordPress as well, right? Because no longer have you got shortcodes that are saved in like in the post body, but you've got semantic HTML markup that doesn't need transforming when it's pulled through from, or at least there'll be less of that kind of PHP interpretable content. So there'll be less work for themes to do. There'll be a cleaner separation of concerns as well. So the kind of MVC framework that I hear disparagers talking about, like WordPress doesn't have it, right? Because you've got views and controllers on the same page, and it's not in line with modern software development. Yeah. For me, that's another of the advantages of Gutenberg, right? Hopefully it lets us, where appropriate, pull those two things apart while still getting the benefit from it being one platform, right?
Oh yeah, that's fascinating to hear you riff on that. We should talk again and more, because I'm curious to learn more, and hopefully, right? I hope that's the case. The digital glue analogy, I like that a lot.
Cool. So I feel like we should definitely do a couple of comments, otherwise we're going to get torn apart. So you can see them as well as I can. I guess the infamous Ant Miller's question's got the most votes, so we should definitely answer him. So are the similarities with the UI of tools like Medium going to make a significant difference to sell the utility of WordPress?
That's interesting. I don't know if this is going to go off on a tangent, but one of the things that excites me about Gutenberg is this idea that that it's setting WordPress up for the next 10 years of the web. WordPress was kind of born during the Web 2.0 revolution, where server-side technologies became a lot more accessible. This is, when user-generated content really started thriving on the web. Online forums started popping up, and Facebook and MySpace. The web used to be mainly a tool for browsing static information, HTML pages, and doing research, to this new kind of model where everyone could start creating content. WordPress thrived. I think the next 10 years of the web, I think there's going to be similar huge changes in the technology that becomes available and moves downstream, and that the flexibility of Gutenberg and the flexibility of blocks being encapsulated, pieces of content that can live and be displayed independently of one another. I think that's where the power is going to come from. I think that Medium and what we see today in those kind of walled garden, Squarespace, Wix, Medium, Shopify, I think that it's going to make WordPress a better option, or put them, modernize the interface relative to those. But I also am hopeful that it's going to leapfrog those technologies and open up new. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is this idea of personalization that you see on Facebook or on Amazon. When you go into Facebook, your news feed is a personalized collection of blocks, really, right? Blocks that your friends have posted or that brands have posted, and there's AI and machine learning algorithms behind the scenes that are fine-tuning this and showing you. It's a little creepy on one end too, right? But they're showing you this personalized view of blocks that is engineered to keep you on the site for as long as possible, and it works, right? Amazon does the same thing. When you buy a product, it is wildly, they're so good at knowing what comes next. When you buy a laptop, they'll ask if you want to buy the protector and the additional charging cable and the spare batteries, and it's personalized to you. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for WordPress to leverage that technology as it moves downstream. Again, sorry. I knew this was going to tangent off from the from the discussion around Medium, but that's like, in a simple answer. My hope is that it's going to leapfrog what's going on now, and that's really where the power and the fun and exciting area of Gutenberg exists.
Yeah, no, that's. I wasn't expecting you to go down that route, but I think now you have, and thinking about that, like for WordPress to continue to grow and be successful, we have to optimize for the future and for kind of new territories within web, whilst also not losing kind of the traditional stakeholder base of, I just want to blog, or I've got a very small business, I want to get going. And yeah, I mean, the whole way that the Gutenberg team has thought about and conceptualized the project really works for that way, right? Because from the bottom up, it means that people are going to look at Squarespace, Wix, Medium, Shopify, and WordPress, and they're more likely to choose WordPress with that editor than without it, because it's going to be a much better experience. So from that direction, WordPress will continue to sell itself, right? It will continue to be something that people find and become familiar with naturally and sell into organizations. I think that's really, it must frustrate the heck out of Sitecore and Adobe, because nobody goes, oh, I just knocked up this Adobe Experience Manager site at home, and I really think this could be a great tool for us to use. They've got sales teams, and they have to deal with enterprise sales cycles. WordPress is like this little guerrilla ninja that leaps out the bushes and suddenly it's in the enterprise stack. I mean, it must be. But I think Gutenberg supports that kind of that growth in the sort of WordPress selling itself. But at the other end, I think the idea of kind of personalization and kind of going back to that idea of taking best of breed components and extending WordPress as an enterprise needs to suit its purposes actually stands up with Gutenberg really well as well, because what one of the trends, of course, is personalization and kind of machine learning, and that, you know, automated optimization, even like as a page loads, deciding which blocks to spin in and put out. At the moment, if you tried to do that with tiny MCE, it would be a disaster, right? And the fact that all the page builder technologies are in their little silos means that it's much harder for somebody to come along with a product or a service that offers that automated optimization, personalization route across. You know, they're kind of going after one or two of those silos rather than the entire WordPress marketplace. So hopefully, this kind of the blockization of WordPress content actually opens the door to that kind of enterprise and beyond. You know, free the content. You could bring a quote from a specific WordPress post through to be displayed on a Sitecore page, or likewise, if you've got a WordPress blog and you're referencing a product that's on your Sitecore site, authenticated API, you'll be able to pull that through and embed it right there. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a very kind of enabling project from both sides. So it should make it more attractive to enterprises as they increasingly need this kind of automation there, and it should make it more attractive to, you know, to people like my wife who's got a jewelry shop and she just wants to get content online.
That's a great point. Yeah, the core base, you know, WordPress is a blogging platform. The people that started with WordPress are presumably writers. It's tapping into that niche. It's killing a lot of birds with one stone, like relative to Squarespace or Medium and Wix, which are, you know, maybe you could consider a one-off tool. WordPress is a platform, and the Gutenberg approach from the core team is developing the platform as opposed to just one area.
Cool. So, Ant, I hope that was enough rambling for your question. So Jenny's question, I think, is a really good one as well. So, like, there's a community of page builders, right? There's Beaver, there's Divi, there's Visual Composer, there's Corner. Like, there's a suite of them. Do you talk to each other? Are you like kind of coordinating battle plans for this?
Yeah, I was hoping they would show up today. Gosh, these guys. No, you know, in seeing that question, I realized we should probably talk more. Where I've gotten the opportunity to chat with the other people that are running page builder businesses or at WordCamps. I had the opportunity to meet Yanni from the Elementor team this year at WordCamp, and I've had a couple of times getting to chat with Nick Roach from Divi. We actually all joked around, you know, at WordCamp US this year in the speaker sponsor area, there was a table where they were doing user testing for Gutenberg, and they had a setup where you could go and they would do a kind of a look over your shoulder, ask you for a couple questions, and we all plotted to go up there and kick the table leg out from the Gutenberg table and run off and yell Beaver Builder, and so we have a very friendly relationship. Those guys were great. It was awesome meeting them in person. To be honest, we don't do a lot of collaboration or discussion outside of the kind of friendly, you know, we're in the same space. But yeah, I mean, seeing that question come up, maybe we should. I'd be curious to hear their take on it, especially if we could, you know, get a couple drinks in us and really talk candidly about, you know, what we're working on, what we're afraid of, what we think is opportunity. I think that would be it would be super interesting. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but.
Well, something that we did this year, which I really enjoyed, and I thought it was a great way of adding some open source to the way we do business, was that we teamed up with sort of 9 or 10 other WordPress agencies, in fact, open source agencies, and we co-funded a white paper about GDPR, which is a big thing that everyone's scared about in the UK about personal data privacy, security. Yeah. And so maybe there's an opportunity there for you, for you to stick a few bucks in the pot and pay somebody to come up with a kind of a white paper, because you can go so much further with that, right? And for me, that's one of the things that WordPress as a community hasn't quite solved yet, right? Is that these big enterprise players, they can produce this collateral, right? They've got marketing teams, they've got big budgets to go out and do all this glossy stuff. And actually, a lot of WordPress businesses are pretty small, and marketing budgets aren't, they're just not comparable. So maybe that's an idea.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to. It's rare that collaborating, and we've seen, it's been heartwarming in the WordPress space to see how competing products that are in the same space are able to have a friendly existence, and we saw that a lot. We did a conference in Cabo, and there was two of the big form builder plugins that were in the same pool, and it was an intimate conference. We got really deep into business strategy and approaches, and they were able to candidly discuss and be part of those discussions, and share a drink and a hug at the end of the week. And I wonder if you see as much of that in other spaces. It's one of the reasons I really like being in this. It feels very communal here.
Cool. And yeah, Anne's just saying here in the comments as well that maybe the marketing team would help support that as well. I mean, that would be a perfect example of the open source community and the commercial parts of that kind of co-funding a piece strategy, and some collateral around that would be beneficial to everyone. Also, yeah, anytime you're heading back to Cabo for like a business conference, you just give me a shout.
Going back to Chris Lemmo, we always joke he just puts press at the end of the things he likes, and then it becomes a tax write-off, right? Like Cabo press and cigar press and camping press.
Yeah. So I think we're actually overrunning a bit here. Maybe not. I can't remember what the timings were, but let's ask. I mean, we kind of have
to
get
back into those. Let's knock out the questions. I agree.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, like if we don't answer Tammy's question, then we'll be doing her a massive injustice, the amount of time and effort she's put into the Gutenberg project. So she's asking, what feature excites you the most about Gutenberg, and what one do you wish it had?
God, that's such a Hey Tammy, that's a good one. I guess there's a couple different levels that I could answer that on. I love the undo redo feature. That's one that I wish we had in Beaver Builder that you guys made look so seamless and easy. I think that, and again, I wish I had more of a technical background to understand the complications and reasoning behind this, but working with blocks outside of Gutenberg, I know has been a challenge for our team, and that's something that we would love to have more flexibility in doing. In saying that, I don't know how much of a practicality or reality that would be, but that's something that interests us naturally. And also, I'm wildly excited to see where the team heads when it gets into site customization and theming, particularly the Gutenberg theme, the next theme coming up. I'm anticipating. I'm very much looking forward to.
Cool. Well, I guess I should probably try and answer that one as well. I think for me, it's less a feature and more like the philosophy of Gutenberg, like the way it's been architected and thought about, and everything that enables. So some of the stuff we've talked about, like kind of programmatic access of content blocks within posts. Like I can imagine that we're going to see a lot of innovation within the theming space now. So at the moment, you're pretty much like on a homepage for a news site, often you're pretty much restricted to a block with some titles in, and this is a block with some pictures in, this is a block with some pictures and titles in. If we can access this content within posts via Gutenberg in that way, then it opens everything right up. We can have like the latest pull quotes or the latest tweets from within those stories, right? So it should make for a far more kind of rich and nuanced content management experience when it comes to kind of showcasing what's outside of that kind of featured image and title paradigm. So I'm really excited about what that means for design and innovation. I'm also really excited about the fact that the same stack is interpreting the back end editor as the front end, right? So it's pretty much like I can imagine if you're an editor with only they're not like almost certain parts of the page are locked down like they would be on the front of the site, and other ones you can move around and you can edit. But you know, that kind of as you talked about, Robby, that kind of convergence of the back end and the front end look and feel. I mean, wouldn't it be awesome if they were, you know, if that was just one thing, right? You know, one style sheet, one JavaScript engine that was rendering that stuff out. Yeah, so there's a couple of things like that, but it's kind of some of the principles that the team rounded out right from the start about what the project was going to do and the approach it was going to take. You know, I love the fact that there's no shortcodes anymore. The fact that it's semantic markup with data attributes and JavaScript. It just makes sense to me. And what do I wish it had? Well, I hope it will have a seamless importer for the majority of common page builder tools. You know, I'd love for our support team to be able to have conversations like, hey, so yeah, you've noticed the editing experience is a little bit different now, but you know, if you click this button to edit it in Gutenberg, you'll notice that actually all your content just becomes much easier to see what's there and how you can interact with it, rather than, oh yeah, no, you're going to need to copy and paste out from the front end and then put it into the back end. You know, so that's definitely something that we're keen to avoid. I'm sure our support team in particular are keen to avoid that one coming on, but you know, that's a job for the community as much as it is the core team.
Yeah, great answer.
Cool, you're very welcome, Tammy. So this one's definitely for you. What process did you undertake to prepare Beaver Builder to be compatible with Gutenberg?
You know, yeah, we kind of tapped into that a little bit earlier. It started as being this, you know, big wide-eyed, whoa, what can we do? What's possible? And we had to, you know, chisel it down into, let's just make sure that it's compatible. One of the things I think was interesting was that we built a block for moving between Beaver Builder and Gutenberg. That at first was kind of this foreign idea that the functionality for switching between the editors would exist as a block. It took a little bit of time to wrap our heads around, but it was really just that simple. We created a block that allows you to move into Beaver Builder, and then when you're back into Gutenberg, you have the option to get rid of that block or not. I think it kind of taps in. There's a couple questions that this taps into, but one of the things we've been exploring too is, you know, we've now that Gutenberg and blocks this, the hierarchy of your document is a lot more structured. And if we pull in, presumably, if we could pull in a page that was built with Gutenberg, having access to each of those elements and being able to, you know, appropriately lay them out in Beaver Builder. What we do now, if you have a page in the WordPress editor that you move into Beaver Builder, it just takes a big text editor block and ports it all over. But this kind of seamless integration is a really fun idea where, and it works both ways too. If you've built out a page in Beaver Builder where you've got a header and images and then text content and another image, having that structure of the document being translatable between both sides is really exciting. We've also experimented with being able to bring content built with Beaver Builder into Gutenberg and take advantage of, you know, the inline editing and the interface there. One of the things that we are excited about and are, you know, considering working on, or a direction we've been talking about going is using that and leveraging that for, you know, folks like yourself, David, or did you go by, sorry, you go by Dave, right? I keep seeing David pop up in the Dave.
Good or bad.
I feel like we're casual enough now. I can go Dave. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
if you have a client that you want to have limited ability to make changes to their page, the Gutenberg interface is going to be the traditional and standard. If you have an advanced editing suite or environment and a page builder where you can have a lot more fine-tuned control and lay out your pages there, and then deliver an experience in Gutenberg where the client can jump in and maybe change out an image or update a date or modify text or something like that. That would make a lot more sense in the environment that they're used to, which will be Gutenberg eventually.
Awesome. Well, I hope that was...
Sorry, that was another tangent, wasn't it?
Well, I don't think it was at all. I mean, it's testing, it's thinking about the use cases, and that's really where you have to start with this stuff, right? It's where all technology answers should start. Is, what is the question? What is the problem that we're trying to solve here, and why, and what value does that create? So no, I mean, until you've done that, until you've let that play out, then saying, well, we've re-engineered with a Angular backend would have been like really concerning. Also, I don't think Angular does backend anyway. So let's ask this next one. The next two questions here, they basically ask the same question, I think, which is, is Gutenberg a friend or a foe? Does this is this a clear and present danger to your business or not?
Yeah, I guess honestly, it's a little bit of both. I think I would be, lying if I said I wasn't concerned, but I also think that there's a lot of opportunity that's going to come in this transitional period. I think that, the reason, I mean, our like Beaver Builder has had fantastic growth over these last 4 years. I know there's been a few other page builders, Elementor in particular, that's come up post Beaver Builder that's also seen fantastic growth. Divi and the Elegant Themes crew, and those guys are just monsters. They're all over the place. They're a huge company. One of the reasons for this is that there was a niche that wasn't being served by the core software, and it was a genuine one. So I think it's the right direction for WordPress to be moving in. And my hope is that there are still many, many more problems to solve in this space of humans building websites, and that Gutenberg has forced us to maybe shift our business plan or our product roadmap to new areas, which has been exciting and fun and scary too, right? So it's definitely a little bit of both. I think in the short term, there's still going to be hundreds of thousands of sites that are running Beaver Builder and customers that we need to support, and people that are, have invested in these workflows that they're not going to want to change immediately. But as time goes on, I think it is inevitable that more and more people are going to be embracing Gutenberg, and again, my hope is that we can continue to provide experiences and solve problems that the core team is not, and continue to have a business in the space. And what that looks like really is still kind of always up in the air and to be determined as the project progresses. But we're optimistic about it, and we want Gutenberg to be successful so that WordPress can be successful.
Right. That's the bottom line, right? Is if we can grow the pie, then your business is going to be just fine. And I can definitely kind of sense the nervousness, but when you listen to your answers, you're here to create great experiences. Problems, that's what we do as technologists, as software engineers. At a high level, we're about like, how do we add value, take pain away, make things better, let people do stuff, and that underpins everything else, right? So I actually think it's easy for me to say because I don't have a page builder product, but I feel really excited for the future of page builders, because it doesn't make sense for there to be like 9 different ways to build out a content row, whether it has 2 columns or 3 or 25%, 75%. That stuff is like it's low value creation, but it's also high, a high barrier to migration and a high kind of cost, because there's so much testing to do, theme side, migration side, like all that stuff. So the more of that kind of low value stuff we can consolidate to core, work on as a community and kind of build on top of, actually, I think probably I'll let you as a business focus on like those higher value tickets that are more interesting for you and your team to work on. I mean, like that's one of the things that I absolutely feel as a kind of agency owner is that, it's very easy to get lost in this world where you're like, wow, tech's disrupting that and it's taking over that and we're replacing this and migrating away from that. You turn around and tech's going to disrupt you pretty quickly as well. So we choose values and be a business that transcends, a particular evolution of a product or a particular type of service. I mean, 10 years down the road, probably people won't build pages anymore. I mean, we see like competition from services like the grid. There are trends outside of WordPress that we have to, we either have to align with or be disrupted by. There are other platforms now. I'm super interested in the sort of blockchain and cryptocurrency space. I think that's really going to come along and mess with everything that we think about digital marketing as it is. And then you've got bots, you've got voice chat, you've got AI, machine learning. I mean, like all this stuff is so much bigger than, which page builder do you use? I mean, like some of these things are profound. And I'm massively proud to be part of the WordPress community that can nurture the kind of talent that can look at such a difficult problem, like a data problem for a third of the internet. Like, let's just say that again. This is like a data problem for a third of the internet, and actually come up with a plan that not only builds consensus within that, but I think aligns with all of those trends. We're freeing our content to be available to the machine. We're freeing our content to be monetized in new, novel ways. We're providing content structures that machines will find far easier to pick up and digest. You're asking Alexa what products you should buy and how much it costs. Having that content semantically structured within an API, that's a far more exciting proposition to Alexa than trying to scan a bunch of text. I mean, probably Alexa will get clever enough to do that anyway, but I really feel like I'm taking no credit for this whatsoever. I'm proud to be part of a community that allows such incredible people to have such a vision that stands up against all, this backdrop of other stuff that's going on. So I can't even remember where that tangent started. But.
No, it was really well put. And I know I got to give a plug for Morton and his talk on Gutenberg in the AR and VR space, that our content can also be displayed in all new ways. And let's see here. I just got a little, oh yeah, there we go. I don't know if I cut out or you cut out. I had a little internet glitch there. But I think we're back. Okay, good. Yeah. Along with being parsed and analyzed by the machines, it's also enabling the content to be displayed in completely new and novel ways. And it's a fascinating space to be in. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do anything else either. The pace of technology and building on top of a platform like WordPress provides so many benefits that the few downsides are easily looked over.
I mean, you've run an agency. It might be kind of a relaxingly long time ago now, but I'm sure you remember that feeling of kind of waking up at 3 a.m. and going, "Oh my goodness, what if there's no work to do? We're all gonna have to find other jobs," and and then you wake up at 3 a.m. the next night and you're like, "Oh my goodness, how on earth are we going to keep up with everything? There's so much to do. We're never going to get it." It's like, it's such a breakneck kind of an industry, right? I mean, things change so quickly, and it's exhilarating. That's one of the things I love about working in tech is like, where else does this happen? Where we can talk about the impact at this kind of scale. When we push Gutenberg out, how many millions of people are we? Probably billions, right? Billions of people will be affected by Gutenberg going out. I mean, I'd suspect most of those billions probably won't care, which will be a good outcome. But it's profound.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're going to get real deep here, but tapping into the WordPress mission statement of democratizing publishing, and of the billions of people on this planet, a large percentage of them don't have access to this technology yet. And Gutenberg being a much more mobile friendly editor, I love this idea that as the next generation and the next billion people come online, they're probably not going to be using a state of the art MacBook Pro with a mouse and a keyboard. They're going to be using a touch device. But the core's push to democratize publishing and give everyone the ability to publish their thoughts and their words, and how the technology needs to shift to accomplish that mission. It's a great space to be in. I wouldn't want to do anything else. It's even if I have trouble going to bed at night worrying about what's going to happen when Gutenberg puts us all out of business, I wake up excited the next day thinking about, well, what are we going to do in response to that? How can we make things better?
Good. Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one with 3 a.m. dramas.
High highs and low lows.
Well, it's better than being bored, I reckon.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
So I think we've answered Shara's question as well, which is, can the builders work with Gutenberg? So I'm going to move down to the question from Mark James. So once you've built a compatibility between the and Gutenberg, then it's the migration sort of challenge. We covered that a little bit, but I think a lot of people out there, both direct end users and agencies, are going to be particularly nervous around migration. Like, how much of a job is this going to be? And I think it's probably worth, I'd love to hear that directly from you. Like, what do you think that experience is going to be?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think the larger the organization and the more someone's invested in whatever process they have now, the less likely they're going to want to be to migrate or to change that. And that's why you see issues of Internet Explorer still popping up in Fortune 100 company intranets, because they've invested in this stack 10 years ago, and then probably at the time was hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to get this technology, and they don't want to they want to keep that and get return on that investment for as long as possible instead of having to start over. I wish I had a better answer to that question. I really don't know what that's going to look like. I think the process of integrating Gutenberg into core, and then the process of making existing WordPress sites Gutenberg friendly, it's such a big challenge. I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm excited to see it start happening. I think it's going to be easier to figure that out once it's like rolling like skateboarding down a hill, right? Like, you can't really plan for. I just learned how to go snowboarding, right? And I watched a couple of YouTube videos, but it wasn't until I actually started barreling down that mountain that I was able to start figuring things out and hopefully keeping my feet underneath me. And I think it's going to be similar to that. We're just going to have to push the ball over the hill and hopefully direct it in the right way as it goes.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I love about the community so much, is that the worst case is there's going to be a commercial opportunity for people to do migration services. I think the reality is that this will get baked in both to Gutenberg and the page builders. There'll be a kind of meeting in the middle of how to make the experience great for end users. That's what a lot of this is about anyway. But I might just go and register gutenbergmigrationtools.com just in case. But there's, almost everyone in the WordPress space from a kind of professional services point of view is an entrepreneur, right? there was no big company that suddenly went, right, and we're going to start well, that I know of anyway, that says, right, we're going to start a small WordPress freelancing shop and help it grow. We've all kind of made this stuff. So we're all used to, we've all experienced beans on toast months, and we've all, dreamt of having beautiful recurring revenue with predictable churn rates. And, it sounds like you've done a great job with that, but, WordPress is nothing except if it's not an entrepreneurial space, both by its end users and its, and us as the professionals, I guess. So I'm really confident that the migration problem is, it's going to go away pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to. Yeah. Fingers crossed. I like that.
Cool. So we've got one more, which is I'd really like to see page builders working as a simple front-end designer, as Robby mentioned. So yeah, this is a really interesting one. So some of the design tools like Sketch, Vision, Studio, Photoshop, etc. I mean, that's one of the other trends that we're definitely seeing now. We've had a sort of creative team in-house for. We've had like somebody doing creative for a couple of years now, but we've got a kind of a full team now, and they're really interested in looking at workflow. How do you go from the UX through to a design, through to an actual published site? And a lot of those like Sketch and InVision, including all the rounds of feedback and everything, it's that kind of whole creative workflow. How can we accommodate that as WordPress? Because otherwise, potentially we get left behind, right? WordPress has been like the darling of the creative agency because they can design whatever they want, and people can actually afford to get it built by, a freelancer or an agency. Now, the risk is that those creative tools take the web publishing side of things back. So it's a bit of, I see that as one of the kind of opportunities, challenges, battlegrounds for WordPress is like relevance in terms of realizing creative. So yeah, I mean, is that on your radar? Like SVGs and masks and layouts and animations and importing all that stuff. Sorry, big rambling question. So
No. Yes. I mean, to answer simply, yes, definitely. The space of creating and collaborating on design is we've been doing a lot of deep dives recently into what that is and what that means. There was a great article going around by Brad Frost. I think the title was your sketch library. Your sketch library is not a design system, or it was something along that lines where just the visual pieces that you use to design, or the collection of visuals, there's so much more to design and creating than that. Coming down to code and branding and language guidelines and copywriting, there's all these different pieces of the puzzle that need to come together to output a website. We don't have any concrete plans of challenges that we're specifically solving in that space, but it's the space that we're doubling down in, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And again, of course, as Gutenberg matures and becomes a reality, that will complement very well with what we're doing currently, with what the core team in Gutenberg is doing. One of the challenges in that space, or in the web space in general, though, is that there was another great article. Maybe I'll try and link these out somewhere. Another great article about how it was called, I think, like the simple has become challenging again. And the web design space evolves so quickly, and there's always kind of these flavor of the month tools and approaches and technologies, and we've had to resist. We have a little internal struggle sometimes. For a long time, I was always the one that was like, oh my gosh, hey, like we need to use this new like shiny ball technology. This is it. This is going to solve everything. And then, a lot of them come and go, and being conservative in how we approach embracing new technologies has served us well, I think, specific to things like, embrace, I guess SVG won out. There was a time there when using SVGs was this newfangled. I mean, WordPress, still doesn't it? Don't you still need a plugin to be able to upload an SVG to the media library? This is still really fresh stuff. So, again, now I'm tangenting off, but it's a challenge in what we're doing in how much you want to embrace the fresh and the new versus how much you want to just focus on accomplishing an end goal, and how much do those new technologies actually help you get to that goal?
I don't think that was a tangent at all. I mean, I guess that's one of the opportunities for page builders, right? Is if Gutenberg's taking care of the sort of underlying structures and the fact that you can now have kind of views that are totally separated out, then what opportunities are there to sort of almost import a pattern library from a theme back up to one of the design tools, or alternatively, to read it and import it in? Because I mean, I've been building WordPress sites for longer than I care to remember, and that was always one of the things that I found kind of weird, right? Is that you would get a website designed first, and then you go about building it, and you discover that there's all this inefficiency here, our line heights didn't match up, and there's that whole movement of designing in the browser, right?
Yeah, there was that awkward teenage period of moving from pixel perfect design into responsive designs. I remember that fondly. Yeah, right? You get your comp, and then
that was another thing the iPhone killed, right? It's suddenly everyone was happy to pay to produce a desktop design, but when your agency turned around and say, well, give us pixel perfect mobile designs as well, and it costs you twice as much, they were like, okay, just make it kind of work. And that was how that one ended. So it'd be interesting to see how this sort of new content management experience reignites that kind of discussion, right? Because potentially WordPress and page builders could push out to the design space, and on the other hand, sort of be a more receptive home to it. And I wonder whether that's not a pretty good opportunity for WordPress as well. If we can be a good home to, because there are, the question lists, how many design tools are there? Sketch, InVision, Studio, Photoshop. I think there's a whole bunch of other ones as well, that like Zephyr, and I hear the creative team talking about. So if we can make WordPress sort of a willing recipient of that design input, then that feels like a bit of a growth sector too. Oh, and Gravnetic, yeah. So thanks. Yeah, you agree. Good. I'm glad I wasn't just making that up.
We've discussed how it would be cool if you could jump into Beaver Builder the way you can jump into a native application like Photoshop or Sketch and just start designing for the browser. Currently, that's not really, I mean, any of the native tools. That's you're designing and then you're creating your designs in one space, and then they are being outputted in a different space, and being able to move those closer together is a fun thing to think on.
So I guess one mutated version of the future is Adobe Calypso, right?
Yes, yeah, right. I'm sure they're working on something in that space as well. And yeah, InVision has made leaps and strides in that direction too. I think all of the new generation of tooling it's been exciting to watch how those have evolved and progressed and made our lives both a little more complicated at times, but also easier in other ways, right? Like solving old problems creates new ones.
Yeah, that's the world of tech. So I guess if you're not going to sing us a Gutenberg song, which sounds diminishingly unlikely, like money, time, imagination, no object, what Gutenberg block would you build and why?
God, can I take like a sidestep answer to that? And I feel like blocks are going to be, everyone's going to be building blocks. Like building a block, I don't know if that interests me as much as the problems that come with blocks. I mean, one of the things we've talked about is syncing blocks, right? Or building, staging development environments, or if you have created something on your site and you want to share it with a friend, I guess that would be a feature more than a block. I don't know if I'm sorry. I don't know if I have a good answer.
So version control, workflow enabled block, basically.
Yeah, and going back to Tammy's question about features we'd like to see, that's in honesty been a challenge that we've encountered throughout the time of doing what we do with Beaver Builder is the staging versus deployment environments, and working, especially when you're tying into the database, you want to build in staging. And with theming, you could jump into a theme's HTML and build out, code. You design in code, and your CSS is code, and then you can push that code via GitHub. But when you introduce a blog post or something that you're working in WordPress with in the database, then you can't push database changes. And some people have been working on this, like DeployBot, and there was Ramp from CrowdFam. And there have been tools that have tried to solve this problem of syncing databases up, and that's been something that's been a thorn in our side for a while, that I could foresee being an opportunity or a challenge for Gutenberg moving forward too.
Yeah, great. That is, that's something that we haven't even talked about, right?
Yeah, we could do another 90 minutes on staging and syncing and deployment, right? Or workflows or all that.
It's
Hi guys.
Oh, hey.
That's the okay. Yeah, this is them telling us we should not do that, I think. Can I quickly punt that question back over to Dave? Do you have one? Is there one thing that you'd love to see, or one like top of the hill?
I was hoping Jenny was going to cut us off before I had to answer that.
No, I wasn't. But I was just going to quickly say that, this whole entire Guten Tag event is the idea. When I thought of it with like Anna and Zach and people, was to facilitate these conversations, and definitely there's so many other conversations happen, and hopefully this is the start of a series of conversations. So if you two want to come back and do another 90 minutes, by all means, I will set a date and a time, and you two can come back and start talking about development staging and everything on top. But yeah, David, take it away.
I guess I would like a smell block, like you can configure a smell to your website. I think that would be pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I'm a big coffee drinker, so that could be appealing.
Yeah, and if you really make a bad mistake when you're coding a website, then I don't want to know what smell that gives you. And we should probably leave that on that note.
I like it.
Well, thank you both of you for a really highly enjoyable 1.5 hours. It's been really good fun listening to you both just talk about all things Gutenberg business. I honestly wasn't sure where this conversation was going to go, and it's been really good fun just watching you, go on different tangents and come back. Thank you so much to both of you, both Dave, for taking the time to come on board. On that bombshell, yes, we have one more session of the day, which will be starting in half an hour, which will be Zach Gordon doing a practical how-to. And I think when we were talking about this as a group of organizers, we thought, what is the first practical thing we need to know about Gutenberg? And it came and boiled down to how to stay up to date with all the news that's going on with Gutenberg, because it's changing so fast and so rapidly. So Zach's going to come online in half an hour and share with you his tips and tricks on how to stay up to date with the news around Gutenberg. One thing that I would like to point out to everyone, and everyone who's been following us along so far, the hashtag is Guten Tag WP on any social media of preferences. We will be doing some feedbacks forms and stuff, and me and the rest of the organizers, if you want to get involved, you're more than welcome to come and join us. We'll be publishing information on how to and set up one of these Guten Tag events, because it's for the community, by the community. And this whole concept came from watching a Slack channel have multiple discussions about Gutenberg, and me thinking, hey, it'd be really cool just to people saying, well, what do base builders think? And I was like, you know what? Why don't we just go and ask them and get them on board and ask them? So, I'd love to know what everyone else wants to hear as well from these sessions as well. And hopefully we can curate some other topics. I've heard like all sorts today. So definitely getting the ball rolling on those will be cool. So yeah, thank you so much for David. Thank you so much, Robby. I know it's really early, so thank you for getting up early on your side of the world. And I will see the rest of you at 5:30. See you later. Bye.